My name is Nelson Walton. On July 14th, 2024, I was 17 years old, living in Henderson, Nevada. It was one of those Mojave summer days where the air doesn't just sit on you, it pushes. The thermometer on our back porch read 114 degrees, and the sky was a flat, bruised white. I remember standing in the kitchen, reaching for a glass of water, and feeling a strange, rhythmic thumping behind my left eye. It wasn't a headache. It felt like a physical presence, like a finger tapping on my brain. My mom was at the kitchen table, highlighting sections in a legal pad for her work. She didn't look up, and I didn't say anything because, at 17, you think you're invincible until the exact second you aren't. I felt a sudden, sharp spike of heat in my chest that had nothing to do with the Nevada sun. My vision started to tunnel, the edges turning a grainy, static gray. I tried to grip the edge of the granite countertop, but my fingers felt like they belonged to someone else. Numb, heavy, and unresponsive. I remember the sound of the glass hitting the tile floor. It didn't shatter, it just sort of thudded and rolled. I tried to call out to my mom, but my tongue was a lead weight in my mouth. The medical report later called it a spontaneous intracranial hemorrhage brought on by an undiagnosed arteriolar malformation. To me, it just felt like the lights were being dimmed by a hand I couldn't see. I hit the floor hard. I felt the cold tile against my cheek for a fraction of a second, and then the world simply retracted. The sound of my mom screaming my name didn't fade out. It stayed perfectly clear, but it started to sound like it was coming from the bottom of a very deep well. I wasn't scared yet. I was mostly just annoyed that I couldn't get my legs to move. Then, the blackness wasn't just in my eyes, it was inside my lungs. I took one last, ragged breath that tasted like copper, and then the room, the heat, and Elias Thorne simply ceased to exist. The transition wasn't a tunnel or a light. It was a shift in perspective. I was suddenly hovering near the acoustic ceiling tiles of Trauma Room 4 at St. Rose Dominican. I could see the grime on the top of the surgical lights. Below me, a team of 6 people was moving with a terrifying mechanical efficiency. I saw myself, or rather, I saw the shell I used to inhabit. My skin was a waxy, translucent blue-gray that looked nothing like the tan I'd worked on all summer. A nurse named Sarah, according to her badge, was straddling my chest, performing manual compressions. I could hear the rhythmic crunch of my sternum. It was a sickening, wet sound, but I felt no pain. I felt an incredible, heavy stillness. The lead doctor, a man with deep bags under his eyes and a wedding ring taped to his wrist, called out, "Asystole," charging to 200. I watched them press the paddles to my chest. My body lurched, a pathetic, floppy jump that looked like a fish on a deck. Nothing. Increased to 300. Administering 1 milligram of epinephrine. I saw the syringe go in. I saw the clock on the wall. It was 4:22 p.m. My mother was behind a glass partition, her face pressed against the surface, her mouth open in a silent, jagged wail. What struck me wasn't the drama. It was the clinical coldness of it all. They were fighting for a heart that had already quit. I looked down at my own hands, or what I thought were my hands, and they were shimmering like heat waves off a highway. I wasn't a ghost. I was a witness. I realized then that the me on the table was just equipment. The me near the ceiling was the operator who had been evicted. I heard the monitor's long, continuous beep. The doctor looked at the clock, then at the nurse. He didn't say the words yet, but he stopped. He let go of the paddles. In that silence, the hospital walls didn't fade. They just became transparent, dissolving into a reality that made the trauma room look like a cardboard set. The hospital didn't disappear so much as it was overwhelmed by a different kind of space. I wasn't in the clouds. I was standing on a flat, vast expanse of gray sand that looked like the bed of a dried-up sea. The air here didn't have a temperature. It felt like breathing pure consciousness. It was quiet, but not the silence of an empty room. It was the silence of a crowded theater right before the curtain rises. I turned around, and he was just there. He wasn't glowing with a blinding, radioactive light. He looked like a man, but the man part felt like a courtesy to my limited brain. He wore a simple, dark tunic that looked like it was made of heavy wool, and his hands were calloused, the skin etched with the lines of actual labor. He didn't say, "Fear not," or use any archaic language. He looked at me, and his eyes were the most exhausting thing I've ever seen. They were filled with 1 billion individual tragedies and 1 billion individual joys, all happening at once. "Elias," he said, His voice didn't echo. It sat right in the center of my chest. "You're early, but you're here because you need to see the rot before it spreads." I looked down at the gray sand. "Am I dead?" "Your heart has stopped," he said, stepping closer. He didn't walk. The space between us just closed. "But you aren't finished. There is a specific shadow moving through the places that claim my name. People are building golden gates over open pits, and they are calling the pits heaven." He reached out and touched my shoulder. His hand felt solid, more solid than the hospital floor or the Nevada heat. It felt like the only real thing in existence. "I am going to show you the men who speak for me but do not know me," he said. The air around us began to vibrate, and the gray sand started to shift, turning into the polished marble floor of a massive, modern building. I could smell expensive cologne and the ozone of high-end stage electronics. "The warning isn't for the world, Elias. It's for the ones who think they are safe." The gray sand didn't just disappear. It dissolved into the high-gloss sheen of a stage. I was standing in the wings of a megachurch, the kind that looks more like a corporate headquarters or a high-end concert venue. I could smell the distinct metallic scent of a fog machine and the faint, expensive aroma of roasted coffee from the lobby. A man was walking past me, adjusting a wireless microphone pack clipped to the small of his back. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my mom's car, and he was practicing a smile in a full-length mirror. It wasn't a smile of joy. It was a calibrated expression, the kind a salesman wears right before he closes a deal. Jesus stood beside me, his presence a heavy, grounding weight against the artificiality of the room. He didn't look at the stage. He looked at the man's hands. "Watch his fingers, Elias," he said quietly. I saw the man nervously twisting a heavy gold ring, his cuticles bitten raw. Despite the bravado, the man was vibrating with a frantic, low-level static of anxiety. Then, a voice boomed over the PA system, introducing him as a prophet of the new harvest. The crowd, thousands of them, erupted into a roar that felt physical, a wave of desperate, hungry energy. The man stepped out into the spotlight, and the transformation was instantaneous. The anxiety vanished, replaced by a booming, authoritative cadence. He began to speak about divine acceleration and financial breakthroughs, pointing at people in the front row and shouting declarations of prosperity. But from where I stood, I could see the spiritual architecture of the room. There were thin, gray cords extending from the people's chests, all pulling toward the stage, but the cords weren't connecting to the man. They were being fed into a massive, invisible machine behind him, a grinding, gears and smoke apparatus that looked like it was made of rusted iron and broken promises. "They are trading their peace for a script," Jesus said, his voice flat with a grief that made my own chest ache. "He tells them I sent him, but he only hears the echo of his own ambition." The scene shifted violently. The lights of the auditorium didn't fade. They snapped into the harsh, flickering fluorescent glow of my kitchen in Henderson. But it wasn't the day I collapsed. It was later. I saw my mom sitting at the kitchen table, but she looked 10 years older. There was a stack of final notice envelopes spread out in front of her. She was holding a flyer. The same one I'd seen the man on the stage promoting. It promised a miracle healing and restoration of loss for a seed gift of $5,000. I watched her pick up her phone. Her hands were shaking. She went into her banking app, the same one I used to check if I had enough for a burrito, and I saw the balance. It was exactly $5,012. That was my college fund. That was the money my dad had left in his life insurance policy. She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the transfer button. I tried to scream, to tell her it was a lie, that I was right there and I didn't need a miracle bought with her survival. But I was a ghost in my own home. "Mom, don't!" I yelled, but the sound didn't even ripple the air. Jesus stood in the corner of the kitchen, his shadow long and dark against the refrigerator. He wasn't stopping her. He was watching the choice. My mom whispered a prayer. A genuine, heart-wrenching plea for my recovery, and then her thumb pressed down. The screen flickered, transfer successful. The silence that followed was deafening. She put the phone down and put her head in her hands, sobbing with a mixture of hope and terror. At that moment, the prophet from the stage appeared in the room, but he was translucent, like a digital glitch. He wasn't there to comfort her. He walked over to the stack of bills, picked one up, and smirked. It was the most human, most disgusting look I've ever seen. He looked at me, actually looked at me, and winked. The personal nature of the theft hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just a false prophet in a book. This was someone reaching into my mother's grief to steal my future. This is the fracture, Jesus said. The wolves aren't in the woods anymore, Elias. They are in the living room. The kitchen began to warp, the walls stretching upward until we were back on that vast, gray expanse of sand. The silence returned, but now it felt ominous, charged with the weight of what I'd just seen. I felt a hot, bubbling rage in my gut, the kind of anger that makes your teeth hurt. I looked at Jesus, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of defiance. Why let her do it? I demanded. If you're him, if you're really who they say you are, why let that man take her money? Why let her believe a lie? He didn't get angry. He didn't offer a platitude. He turned to face me fully, and the air around us seemed to thicken, becoming dense as water. Because the warning isn't about the money, Elias. It's about the authority. He gestured to the empty horizon, and suddenly, thousands of people appeared, standing in neat rows, all holding those same colorful flyers, all looking toward a horizon that was empty. A false prophet isn't someone who just gets the future wrong, he said, his voice dropping to a low, resonant frequency that vibrated in my bones. A false prophet is anyone who stands between a soul and the truth and charges a toll. They are building a kingdom of me and labeling it him. And very soon, the toll will become something much more valuable than money. He stepped closer, and I felt the sheer power of his presence pushing me back. The world is entering a season where the noise will become a deafening roar. People will be so desperate for a sign, for a hero, for a word, that they will hand over their discernment to anyone with a loud voice and a bright stage. But listen to me. The one who promises you an easy path out of the fire is usually the one who lit the match. He paused, and the gray sand began to glow with a dull, internal heat. You are going back, Elias. And when you do, the first person you will have to confront is yourself. The gray sand beneath my feet didn't just glow. It turned transparent, like glass over a dark, churning ocean. Jesus didn't look away from me. His gaze was a physical weight, stripping away the teenage bravado I'd spent years constructing. You asked why I let her do it, he said, his voice echoing not in the air, but in the marrow of my bones. You think the false prophet is just a man on a stage with a microphone. You think it's a character in a book. It's not. It is an architecture of the human heart. He waved his hand, and the translucent floor revealed a complex, pulsing network of golden veins and blackened arteries stretching across the earth. The title of prophet is being stolen to build a cage, he continued, his tone direct and clinical, devoid of any poetic fluff. The warning is this. In the coming days, men will rise who claim to hold the keys to the future. They will give you dates. They will give you names. They will tell you that your safety depends on your allegiance to their vision. But here is the truth of it. A true word from me never leaves a soul in debt to a man. These prophets are creating a dependency. They are making themselves the gatekeepers of grace. They tell you that I am angry, that I am distant, and that only they have the frequency to hear me. It is a lie designed to harvest the one thing more valuable than gold, your agency. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine despite the lack of wind. What happens to them? I whispered. Jesus looked out over the vast, glass expanse. They are already happening. They are being consumed by the very shadows they claim to cast out. But the outcome isn't determined by their downfall. It's determined by your refusal to follow them into the dark. People want a king they can see, Elias. They want a voice that tells them they are right and everyone else is wrong. That is the bait. The hook is the silence that follows when the stage lights go out. He leaned in, his face inches from mine. When you return, you will see the mechanics of this trap. You will see the contracts signed in blood and ink. And you will have to decide if you are brave enough to be unpopular. The glass floor shattered, and I wasn't in the afterlife anymore. I was standing in a basement office, wood-paneled, smelling of stale cigar smoke and expensive leather. It was 11:30 p.m. I recognized the man from the stage, the one who had taken my mom's money. He wasn't smiling now. He was sitting across from a man in a charcoal suit whose face seemed to shift and blur whenever I tried to focus on it. On the desk between them was a single sheet of paper. It wasn't a spiritual document. It was a legal contract, heavy with riders and clauses about media rights and political endorsements. The numbers are down in the Midwest, the blurring man said. His voice sounded like gravel shifting in a tin can. We need a new crisis. We need a prophecy about the upcoming election cycle. Something that triggers the survival instinct. If they aren't afraid, they don't give. If they don't give, the platform folds. The prophet wiped sweat from his upper lip with a silk handkerchief. I can't just make it up, he stammered, though his voice lacked conviction. The people, they're starting to ask questions about the last one that didn't come true. The man in the suit leaned forward, and the room grew 10 degrees colder. You aren't a speaker, Arthur. You're an asset. We bought the jet. We bought the parsonage. We bought the silence of your first wife. You will go out there on Sunday, and you will tell them that the Spirit told you there is a darkness coming that only your special anointing can shield them from. You will name the enemies we give you, and you will collect the protection seed. I watched as the prophet picked up a pen. His hand shook, but he signed. In that moment, I saw a black mark appear on his forehead, a bruise that wasn't physical, but a permanent darkening of his very essence. Jesus stood behind me, his hand on my shoulder. This is the why behind the warning, Elias. It is a business of souls. They use my name as a brand to sell a product made of fear. They aren't predicting the future. They are scripting a catastrophe so they can sell the cure. This is what changes. The veil is being pulled back. The prophets are being exposed not by their words, but by their ledgers. And the ones affected are the ones who have traded their inner compass for a charismatic leader. I felt a sickening realization. This wasn't just about religion. This was a systematic hijacking of human hope. The office dissolved, and I was back in my own bedroom in Henderson. It was 3 weeks after my death. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, my head throbbing with a dull, persistent ache. I looked at my phone. I had 17 missed calls from my best friend, Caleb. We'd grown up together, played varsity baseball together, shared everything. I finally picked up. Elias. Man, thank God. Caleb's voice was frantic, high-pitched. My dad. He's gone full into this remnant movement. He sold the truck, Elias. He gave all the money to that guy you saw, the one on the 24-hour stream. He says the prophet told him the banks are going to freeze on the 1st, and we need to invest in the kingdom to be spared. My mom is packing her bags. She's leaving him. I sat there, the weight of the vision pressing down on my chest. Caleb started sobbing. He won't listen to me. He says I'm spiritually blind. He says you're lucky you died and came back because you saw the truth. He wants to talk to you, Elias. He thinks you have a word for him. I looked toward the corner of my room. Jesus wasn't there physically, but I felt the resonance of his voice. The warning is personal. I realized then that my return wasn't a gift for me. It was a burden. If I told Caleb's dad the truth, that his hero was a man signing contracts in a smoky basement, I would destroy his world. If I stayed silent, I was an accomplice. This was the moral compromise Jesus warned me about. Caleb, I said, my voice cracking. I can't tell him what he wants to hear. What does that mean? Caleb's tone shifted, becoming guarded, sharp. You saw him, right? You saw the light. You're on the side of the chosen, aren't you? There is no side like that, Caleb. It's a scam. All of it. There was a long, jagged silence on the other end of the line. So you're one of them now, Caleb whispered. A scoffer. My dad said people would return from the brink changed by the enemy to sow doubt. I didn't believe him. But look at you. Click. The line went dead. I stared at the blank screen of my phone, feeling the first true crack in my life. The prophet hadn't just taken my mom's money. He had just reached out and severed my oldest friendship with a single, weaponized lie. I was alone in my room, a 17-year-old boy with a hole in his head and a truth that no one wanted to buy. The bedroom in Henderson didn't just fade. It peeled away like burnt paper, dropping me back into the weightless, gray expanse. But this time, the man wasn't standing several feet away. He was right in front of me, and the air around us was screaming. It wasn't a sound you hear with ears. It was the sound of a million conflicting certainties crashing into each other. He looked at me, and his face was no longer calm. It was set in a grim, focused intensity that made the previous visions feel like a rehearsal. You see the fracture now, Elias, he said, and the words felt like they were being carved into my chest. The warning about the false prophets isn't a prediction of a distant apocalypse. It is the anatomy of the present ruin. They have taken the word and turned it into a weapon of isolation. They tell the father to abandon the son, the wife to fear the husband, and the believer to loathe the neighbor. all in the name of a purity they themselves sold to the highest bidder. He grabbed my forearms, and I felt the heat of a sun that never sets. "Listen to the answer you were sent to find," he commanded. "The title of prophet is being used to bypass the conscience." Why does it happen? Because people would rather be told they are special and persecuted than be told they are responsible and loved. What changes? The very nature of truth in your world. It is moving from what is evident to what is proclaimed by a leader. Who is affected? Every soul that seeks a shortcut to the divine. And what determines the outcome? He leaned in, his eyes two burning wells of clarity. The outcome is determined by the one who refuses to outsource their soul. The warning is this: if the message requires you to stop loving the person standing in front of you to follow a man on a screen, that message is a poison. The false prophet is the one who offers you a crown while I only ever offered you a cross. The intensity of his gaze became too much to bear. It felt like my atoms were vibrating at a frequency that was trying to shake me apart. "It's time," he said, and for the first time, his voice sounded heavy with a human kind of sadness. "You are going back to a world that will call you a liar, a traitor, and a fool. You will carry the weight of what you saw in that basement office and the grief of your mother's empty bank account. You will not be a hero. You will be a disturbance." Suddenly, the gray expanse collapsed into a single, blinding point of white light. The silence was replaced by a violent, chaotic roar of sound. Beep, beep, beep. The mechanical rhythm of the hospital monitor slammed into my consciousness. I felt a sudden, agonizing pressure in my chest, the aftereffect of the defibrillator. My lungs, which had been empty for what felt like an eternity, suddenly spasms, drawing in a sharp, cold lungful of sterilized hospital air. It tasted like chemicals and old dust. I opened my eyes. The ceiling tiles of Trauma Room 4 were there, just as I'd seen them from above, but now they were blurry and distant. I saw the doctor, the one with the wedding ring taped to his wrist, staring at the monitor in a kind of paralyzed shock. "We have a rhythm," someone shouted. "He's back." "Elias? Elias, can you hear me?" I tried to speak, but my throat felt like it had been scrubbed with sandpaper. All I could do was look at the clock. It was 4:31 p.m. 9 minutes. I had been gone for 9 minutes, but I had watched my mother age 10 years and watched a man sign away the souls of a nation. I felt the hot sting of tears trekking down my temples into my hair. I wasn't happy to be back. I was terrified of the world I now had to live in. 3 months later, I was sitting in our living room. The physical recovery had been grueling. Speech therapy, physical therapy, the constant, low-grade fear that my brain would betray me again. My mom was in the kitchen, making tea. She was thinner than she used to be. She smiled at me, but the smile never reached her eyes. She thought I didn't know about the money. She thought I didn't know why she'd started taking extra shifts at the firm or why she'd stopped buying the good coffee. The prophet from my vision was on the television. He was wearing the same blue silk tie I'd seen him wearing in the smoky basement office. He was talking about a new wave of revelation and asking people to send in their first fruits offering to unlock a hidden blessing. I watched him, my heart hammering against my ribs. He looked directly into the camera, and for a split second, I saw that same wink, that same arrogant, dark flash of recognition I'd seen in the vision. I got up and walked to the mail pile on the counter. Among the junk mail and medical bills was a thick, cream-colored envelope. I opened it. It was a formal invitation to a private partners banquet hosted by the Prophet's ministry, but it wasn't addressed to my mom. It was addressed to me. Inside was a small, handwritten note on heavy cardstock. It didn't have a signature, just a single sentence written in a precise, legalistic hand. "The contract is already signed. Don't make it harder on your mother." I looked at the postmark. It was dated July 14th, 2024, the day I died. It had been mailed 4 hours before I ever collapsed in the kitchen. My hands started to shake. I looked at my mom, who was humming a soft tune while she waited for the kettle to whistle. She didn't see the envelope. She didn't see the shadow. I realized then that the irreversible event wasn't my death. It was the fact that the lie was already in the house before I even knew it was a lie. I tucked the note into my pocket, the paper feeling cold against my leg. The sun was setting over Henderson, casting long, jagged shadows across the tile floor. I knew then that the warning wasn't a story I was supposed to tell. It was a war I was already losing.